All right, so to finish up section 8.3, we're going to compare our confidence interval and our hypothesis test. So in 2009, it was estimated that 63% of Americans supported the death penalty. In 2014, a Rasmussen poll found that in a random sample of 943 Americans, 538 supported the death penalty. Do we have evidence to support that the death penalty has changed among Americans since 2009? So this does look similar to a previous example that we did, but in the previous example we asked if support had declined. In this particular case, we're just asking if it has changed. So that's giving us a two-sided test, right? So we just have a not equal to sign. So we're going to conduct a hypothesis test using a significance level of 5%. Then we're going to construct a 95% confidence level, confidence interval for the proportion of Americans who support the death penalty. And then we're going to explain how our two conclusions support one another. All right, so we're going to start with our hypothesis test, and we're going to start by listing the things that we know. Granted, it was on that previous sheet of paper, but if we refer back to that, our population is going to be all Americans. Our sample size, our lowercase n, is the 943 Americans sampled. All right, our P0 is from our original statement. That was 63%. Our P hat comes from our 538 divided by 943, which is 0.57 or 57%. Our level of significance, our alpha, equals 0.05. And what we want to know, again, we're thinking a two-tailed test, has the proportion changed? So again, we're thinking a not equal to symbol. All right, so for our hypotheses, our null hypothesis is that P equals 0.63. Our alternative hypothesis is P does not equal 0.63. All right, so our conditions, again, they are important. We have mentioned that again in this section. We're just going to skip it in efforts to save a little bit of time and energy. So we're going to compute and compare using StatCrunch. Again, as you're entering the numbers, make sure you are entering the correct pieces of information. We're using our number of successes and the number of observations. Our z that we get is negative 3.78. Our p-value, 0.0002. So if we compare our p-value to alpha, 0.0002 to 0.05, right? It's definitely smaller. So our p-value is less than or equal to alpha, which means that we are going to reject our null hypothesis. Okay. So we're going to reject our null hypothesis, which means that we're going to conclude that our alternative hypothesis, right, is the outcome. So we can conclude that support for the death penalty has changed since 2009. So there's the conclusion to our hypothesis test portion of the problem. Right. Now we're going to go through and we're going to look at the same problem, only we are going to be using a confidence interval to investigate this problem. Right. So using a confidence interval to investigate this problem, our population is still all Americans. Our sample size is still the 943 Americans sampled. Right, our P naught is still our original 63%. Our P hat is still our 538 out of 943, which gives us 0.57. Our confidence level is 95%, because that's going to go with our 5% significance level in the previous problem. Right? And what we're looking for here, thinking about how we're going to phrase this differently, now we're thinking a confidence interval. We're thinking about an estimation. So we want to know, is 63%, right, what we claim to be true about our population, in the confidence interval from our sample? Right, again, our confidence interval, remember, is P hat plus or minus M, right? P hat plus or minus our margin of error. Again, as we did in the last part, we're just going to skip our conditions for our central limit theorem. They are met. Again, it is something that we do want to think about and we do want to do. We're just going to skip it in this case. We can find our standard error and our margin of error if we want to. However, they are automatically calculated for us using StatCrunch. So we're going to go ahead and use StatCrunch. We're actually entering a lot of the same information, same entry into StatCrunch. We're going to our proportion stats, one sample. The difference is, instead of selecting hypothesis test, we're going to select confidence interval. Right, so we're going to find and interpret our interval. So from StatCrunch, we get a confidence interval of 0.54 to 0.60. So our interpretation for our confidence intervals, right? We are 95% confident. That the proportion of Americans who support the death penalty is between 54% and 60%. So now if we look at this in the context of our problem, our original P naught value was 63%. 63% is not within this confidence interval. So the confidence interval conclusion supports the hypothesis test conclusion because 63% is not in the confidence interval. In other words, the population proportion has changed. So the results that we got from our confidence interval supported what we just found in our hypothesis test dealing with the same data. So there's definitely a lot of differences between the two, but there definitely are some similarities in particular types of questions that can be answered by both.